Hello everyone, this is Group 10 and our topic for this assignment is Innovation, Attribution, and Appropriation. At your convenience, we have provided a QR code that links directly to the transcript. Team members. Introduction. When one thinks of innovation, they picture some genius who has invented the next big thing that will take mainstream media by storm. These breakthrough inventions are often coupled with a classic backstory of determination, preservation, and hard work to get recognition. But what if the true story of their innovation was founded from the ideas of others while credit is never to be given? This is where attribution and appropriation come into play. The principle of attribution is giving credit and recognition to the creator of an idea. It is a key form of design justice to protect creators against having their work stolen for the benefit of others. In a work setting, this accreditation will cover all aspects of their contribution within a project. According to the Cone School of Business, appropriation is the method of borrowing ideas, images, content, identity, sounds, and symbols from others. In certain circumstances, appropriation can be viewed as ethically acceptable, but in others, it is considered downright theft. The Interaction Design Foundation published that the appropriation of design is encouraged by new sales and tapping into potentially new markets. Things get tricky when the dynamic of having those in power leads from individuals in lower positions, especially marginalized groups. This, of course, still occurs within design practices, norms, and institutions. It slowly becomes clear that innovation is not as original as it may seem. As author Sasha Costanza-Chalk states, innovation is iterative, with changes that come from the needs and solutions of its users. The users within marginalized groups tend to have an advantage in this field in relation to the matrix of domination, yet they are not hired nor promoted to those key jobs. Instead, their socio-technical innovations are appropriated without attribution for attention and profitability. This also extends to media and cultural innovations, where social movements, led by activists within marginalized groups, fuel those industries. Attribution is crucial because innovators deserve to have their efforts and labor be recognized, especially when it is used for the capital benefit of organizations. Without a system of attribution, appropriation of innovations will come at the expense of those unknowingly providing free labor to fuel socio-technical, attention, cultural, and media economies. History.
Innovation, attribution, and appropriation have always had issues historically in design. Today we delve deeper into these subjects to see why it is so. Appropriation has long been an issue within the design community. While there is no clear origin of appropriation in design, one of the main types of appropriation in design is cultural appropriation. In Cultural Appropriation in Design and the Cipher by Burka-Yagis observes that when elements of a certain culture are physically or conceptually removed from their local context, their original meaning is altered. In another article, Molly Wong of Design Week in the UK talks about how this is a practice that waters down other cultures for Western profit. Based on these two sources, we can infer that appropriation in design is not a new concept to the world. And as of now, those who get affected are populations that Western influence tries to appropriate by implementing their culture into Western designs, such as Native Americans and other cultures that are minorities. One example that I found throughout the internet was Urban Outfitters and Navajo culture being poached, and their designs being altered slightly and put on t-shirts for money and sold under the label Urban Outfitters, with no recognition of Navajo culture. Attribution in design is defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary as the ascribing of a work as of literature or art to a particular author or artist. Attribution in design is one of the earliest concepts in design. People have been attributing artists to their work since the Roman times. Attribution in digital design is something that has recently been up and coming in the past couple of decades. As the internet grew larger, basic attribution was no longer suitable, as those with a larger following could garner false attribution to something through a mass amount of people from something that could have been taken from someone with little or no exposure. Innovation has been something that humanity has always striven for. Humans have always found the need to innovate in order to progress further as a species. When it comes to design, innovation is no different. We are always looking for ways to innovate and move forward as designers. Unfortunately, while anyone can innovate, innovation is usually done by those with wealth or a higher socioeconomic status due to the abundance of available resources. With that being said, historically, those who belong to the lower class and minorities are less likely to be innovators or be attributed with innovation due to their lack of standing within the community. In Design Innovation by Bilge Mutlu and Alpe the author says this theory dates back to the early studies on the capital system, which, at the beginning of the 17th century, gave importance to the use of new discoveries for social wealth. This supports that innovation was starting around the 17th century for the purpose of pursuing socioeconomic wealth.
Overview of relevant research. The idea of innovation and how its trademarks are heavily affected by attribution and appropriation is an interesting aspect to consider when looking at the global market and how transformations in products are conceived. As stated in our history section, mankind has always found the need to innovate to progress further as a species. But in accordance with Chapter 3 of Design Justice by Sasha Costanza-Chalk, our past and current society built upon the values of meritocracy tends to have a pattern of adopting ideas from their subordinates affected by structural inequality. More specifically, there seems to be a turn in the corporate side of the market where businesses are now relying on the benefits of participatory, user-led innovation instead of their own hire teams, where the practice can stretch to such an extreme that nearly everyone will be performing free labor for the digital economy. When overseeing research today that takes this into account, it can lead to various benefits through repercussions. An article called A Simple Question That Can Guide Companies to Epic Success, written by Danielle Cost at Harvard Business School, touches on the main topics of a company's success according to Felix Oberholzer-Guy's research. Essentially, Guy makes it known that the road to strategizing innovation is down to 3 levers: value for the customers, value for the employees, and value for the suppliers. As designers, this is exactly what we were hired for, to give solutions that are lucrative based on these 3 factors. Unfortunately, many designers are not attributed enough for their work, where their intellectual and creative properties are handed off to the top of the capitalist pyramid, or for better words, the high profilers at the head of the company, while not being compensated ethically for their hard work. A designer's claim to their own work is usually forfeited in the legal agreement contract, according to a paper on attribution and appropriation from the University of Texas at Austin. To make things worse, Costanza claims on page 110 in Design Justice that not only is innovation iterative, but many, if not most, small changes, known as iterations, to a given technology are made by everyday people, known as users, rather than by professional scientists, researchers, or product designers. This solidifies the point that one day everyone will be performing free labor for the digital economy, intentionally or unintentionally. According to the article, Product Disasters Can Be Fertile Ground for Innovation by Michael Blanding at Harvard Business School, product accidents may provide companies an unexpected opportunity to develop new technologies desired by consumers. This is an alarming concept considering that most victims are completely unaware of these mishaps. For example, a stroke patient mentioned being subject to a radiation overdose of up to 8 times the normal dose due to a reconfiguration in the CT scanner to help the doctors better see the blood flow inside the brain. Over 200 patients in that hospital alone have been affected by this change before the doctors even figured out the main cause of the issue. When investigated further, it was realized that this was done to many throughout the country. The same goes for Boeing's autopilot malfunction that resulted in the death of 348 people, and Uber's automated car killing a cyclist in 2018, which was later judged as human error. These accidents unfortunately punishes those within the innovator or early adopters category. Sourced from page 111, Design Justice. According to Hong Luo and Alberto Galasso in the same article, the shock awe, and lawsuits following the CT scan incident only furthered the progression of safety patents and public use of the product. The FDA's filings fell down to two major changes: incremental changes, such as alerts, software fixes, notifications, etc., and the radical redesign, such as developing dose-reducing technology, which had previously been general knowledge but had not been further developed due to a lack of demand. All of this was finally implemented by scientists, designers, and so on after disaster had already struck. Regardless, it was ultimately brought to the public's and the company's attention based on real-life application by users. Even though radiation is a big concern for everyone using this device, it was obvious that this life-altering innovation was completely driven by medical professionals in wanting better access to higher image quality. Unfortunately, the measures taken to get this outcome was not on the forefront of their minds. It also goes to show that all products known to man are not foolproof. Risk factors, longevity, financial statistics, and beneficial use in the global market should always be under consideration. Companies that release their goods and deem them safe or usable don't necessarily know for sure unless real people start appropriating the products into their everyday lives. This is mainly where innovation stems from, and virtually no one involved or hurt within the process gets attributed or compensated for their sacrifices. All people involved in the diffusion of innovation are affected by this, especially when mandatory to use products are needed to get certain results. In the end, the pyramid stays a pyramid until there is some substantial change in how we approach innovation. Summary of design developments.
A major development would be that the Metropolitan Museum of Art began an open access policy where they made digital images of artworks in their collection available for unrestricted commercial and non-commercial use, which is free of charge. This is great because they have been uploading high-resolution images from various cultures, which would hopefully reduce any negative appropriation within digital design. Some other examples of inclusive design are things like text-to-speech for hearing-impaired people and colorblind modes in video games for people who are colorblind. These options make sure everyone can have access to those things in one way or another. In terms of any movements related to our topic, the main movements are towards making sites more inclusive for users, which relates to innovation by getting the sites to also be accessible by all groups. To do this, designers are starting to design with rather than for people. This way, no group of people can be left behind when designing something online. Another way teams are tackling this issue is forming more diverse teams when working on a project and when they conduct user testing to make sure they include people of all cultures to make sure they didn't have any missteps or leave someone out. Something designers also need to be aware of is they can use ADA guidelines to examine how your physical spaces either enable or inhibit people's participation. The ADA helps designers know what they need to avoid and what to include so that their design is accessible to all people and avoids any type of cultural appropriation.
Explanation of the future.
The change in the general consensus around appropriation and attribution also shows that, at least when analyzing our country's culture specifically, we're headed in a direction that gives groups the attribution they deserve while also taking measures to rectify current and past instances of unjustifiable appropriation, whether it be culturally or intellectually. When analyzing intellectual and market appropriation, it's important to take into account patent and copyright law. According to the European Journal of Innovation Management, their studies concluded that patents widen the range of useful markets for appropriation. Recent studies are showing that technological innovation will depend heavily on the role of laborers and the effects of wealth inequality going forward. In the article Technology and the Future of Growth, Challenges of Change, technological innovation so far is showing to be causing a wider gap in income inequality and contributing towards working class fears that jobs will be lost due to the rise of automation. This mass insecurity over the loss of jobs to automation will mean that in the future, companies are going to have to decide how they will attribute their developments and their profits to workers, at least enough to incentivize those to work for them after the labor markets have shortened. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's also being discussed that innovation needs to be more resilient and focused than it has been currently. According to the Forbes article, How COVID-19 is Shaping the Future of Innovation, leaders are aiming to develop service lines and processes that are flexible enough to handle society-wide disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic. This points in a direction where innovation focuses more so on HR and training workers to be more flexible with changes and being open to incorporating new technologies into their workflow. When taking this information into account, it seems more evident that as of recent, companies are under more scrutiny to provide better work environments for their workers, and if the future doesn't head in a direction similar to that, then companies will face even more discrimination and more criticism from the general public.
Incorporation of accessible design. To ensure that our video is inclusive for all users, we made sure to include a wide variety of accessibility features. We have provided captions and a full transcript so that viewers can get full access to all spoken audio content. Clear audio is provided with minimal background noise and lowered music so that the speakers can be heard without any major distractions. All displayed images have captions which, according to CSUN's Universal Design Center, has the benefits of ensuring everyone has equal access to them. There are no animations or flashing content to avoid overwhelming viewers with intrusive imagery. As cited from the University of Washington, these can also cause seizures in susceptible individuals. When picking out our color palette, we wanted to go with something that had good contrast while also being colorblind friendly. Lastly, our media player provided by YouTube supports other accessibility features. According to the checklist provided by w3.org, these are interactive transcripts, displaying captions, and changing the speed of the video. Again, we made sure to cover a good set of features to ensure that our video can be accessible for all. To keep the trend going, we want to give full attribution to our work cited. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you were able to take away new knowledge about innovation, attribution, and appropriation. Take care.